Poštovani gledalci, naš gost je Besnik Beriša, poznati prištinski advokat koji je na kosovskom procesu zastupao gospodina Nasera Kelmendija. Nakon objave prvostepene presude, gospodin Beriša pristao je dati intervju za naše gledalce. Mr. Berisha, thank you for accepting this interview and welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
What is the simple truth that court got from this case? What was behind this case?
Well, the truth that the court got from the almost 5-year process, including investigation, is that prosecution indicted the wrong person, listed as a co-indicted people wrong people, trusted the wrong witnesses, and as a result, 8 from 9 counts of the indictments were put down in the garbage container. And I believe the one left, it will be the same in a very near future.
Mr. Kelmendi was targeted as a drug lord at the first place. What do you think about that? So they can pin other criminal activities on him.
Well, it was not only Mr. Kelmendi who was listed as a drug lord in that indictment, but it was also a victim that the prosecution was representing, and I'm referring to Mr. Ramiz Delalic, late Mr. Ramiz Delalic. The prosecution had their theory that Mr. Ramiz Delalic was also a drug lord who was trying to expand his drug activities in Sarajevo, and as a result, according to him, he got into conflict or dispute with Kelmendi, and that ended up Kelmendi with others taking his life. So that was a pack of lies that the prosecution was trying to sell to the court in Kosovo and also trying to sell to the people in Bosnia. But later on, they changed that. They changed because they saw that what they portrayed Mr. Delalic was not true, and what they also portrayed Mr. Kelmendi was not true, because the court concluded that. The indictment itself is based on witnesses who got motive to say anything but tell the truth. It was based on witnesses who had personal motive to testify against many people, including Mr. Radencic. Mr. Radencic was one of the targets that Sheila Turkovic picked him. Mr. Radencic was one of the persons that Sheila Turkovic believed that he was involved in fabricating her husband's case. And Mr. Delalic, in this case, was just used as a bridge to get to Mr. Kelmendi, but I believe that the motive was to get to Mr. Radencic. The whole story, fairy tale story that was built from the prosecution witnesses was not directly to attack Mr. Kelmendi when it comes to the murder charges, but it was created in that way that puts Mr. Kelmendi as an executor of Mr. Radencic's order, which the court proved beyond any reasonable doubt that that didn't happen.
So they got Mr. Kelmendi as a perfect suspect just to harm Mr. Radencic. Is that what are you telling me now?
I think this is how the evidence proved at the end. The evidence proved at the end that Mr. Kelmendi and Mr. Radencic and other gentlemen that were mentioned in the indictment they had nothing to do. They had no motive towards Mr. Delalic. They had never a conflict, personal conflict with Mr. Delalic, and they never had any conflict either with Sheila Turkovic. But because Sheila Turkovic was one of the witnesses that the prosecution considered as a star witness of the process concerning the murder charges, they had to trust her because the connection goes further. The connections, her personal connections with prosecutor Dubravko Champara, who was also listed as a prosecutor, as a coordinator of the prosecution's activities. But in fact, it tended to be the one who was just packing lies and sending lies to Kosovo. Our prosecution in Kosovo was blind, deaf. They never were able to hear and see the truth. They were not seeking the truth, actually, but they were seeking to match the lies that Sheila Turkovic, with her friends later on, tried to sell to them.
So Mr. Champara had a big role in this case. He fabricated evidence in Bosnia and Herzegovina and put it in the Kosovo courtyard?
I think that Čampara is architect of this indictment, is also an architect of this failure. He bears all the consequences why he lied to the people of Bosnia that yes, we got the murders of Mr. Ramiz Delalic. Yes, these murders of Ramiz Delalic were Kelmendi, Radonjic and others. But in fact, I believe that he knows the truth. He knew the truth. He did know that this is wrong people, but maybe he had another motive. He is covering somebody else who was a real killer of Mr. Delalic.
What is the connection with Mr. Čampara and Mr. Hughes? They're both prosecutors. They're both professionals. How did they put in that place?
Well, this is not the first time that the prosecutions makes mistakes. This is not the first time that the prosecutions are not professional, and this is known throughout the world. In many historical cases in the world, you find the prosecution had personal motives. They were blind, they were not seeking the truth, they were not working for the truth. They had personal motives, one way or the other. I don't want to speculate what were the motives of Mr. Dubravko Čampara, but what I saw from the papers, what I saw from the evidence that he was sending over the night, even translated in English, what I saw from the private investigation, as I called throughout the process against Mr. Kelmendi, conducted by him and Mr. Hughes, I think that they were not professional at all. They were not objective at all. They were violating their code of ethics. They were misconducting their duty. I mean, they failed to discharge the prosecution responsibilities in accordance to the law. They were conducting witnesses privately, having discussions with them, preparing them, instructing them, teaching and coaching them what to testify in Kosovo. As you know, in one case in Bosnia against one witness, Mr. Čampara was exchanging SMS messages at midnight with a witness. So he pled guilty to that. He said that, yes, I am guilty, but Hughes was like selling this story into the court in Kosovo. Now he only pled guilty that he called certain person with a certain name, but not that he pled guilty because of misconduct or abusing his official power. So there were other prosecutors involved in here who, for some reason, had a clear motive. They wanted to take Mr. Radonjic down. With whatever it took them to do, they would do, but they had the tools in Kosovo, so they were using and misusing the prosecution in Kosovo.
How come that Mr. Hughes believed Mr. Čampara? He was elder prosecutor. He was a prosecutor from United States.
Well, I'm afraid he had the approach of the prosecution in United States. I'm afraid that he thought that the prosecution's conduct, it's the same like in Bosnia. He thought that Čampara is an objective prosecutor, is not someone who would target people for privately reasons or motives. But maybe he also failed because he was not as an objective prosecutor himself. I mean, what I saw, what I read, what I heard from his submissions throughout the trial, what I heard from the evidence that he produced, I put them in the same league. They are in the same league. They were tango. It took two to tango this process. It took two to lie for 5 years. It took two to fabricate for many years, and that's the result we got. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because people pay taxes and they are paid from taxpayers' money.
So let's get back to these witnesses and their testimonies. You cross-examined those witnesses, Sheila Turkovic, Ms. Saric, and Amir Pasic-Facio, and many others. How did you catch them? Did they collaborate with their previous testimonies? How did you manage to discover that they were lying?
Well, let's put it this way. The bulk of the witnesses of the prosecution had criminal background. this is how they managed to blackmail them, I believe. This is what they managed to, how they managed to get them to lie. Sheila Turkovic was provided as clean witness, so witness with no criminal background. But for some reason, criminal background negative, but the account, financial situation, zero, due to the fact that the court in Bosnia had ordered seizing or confiscating all her funds that, as per the court in Bosnia, they were deriving from criminal activities. So they started with Sheila Turkovic, and how I got them, each one of them quashed and broken, because it was too hard to remember their lies. The lies that they packed, the lies that they were learning by heart, the lies that they were practicing home and coming to tell to the court was hard to remember. I was ping-ponging them from one corner to another. I was ping-ponging them with the previous testimonies that they got, and I was showing clear discrepancies that they had, and I was attacking their motive. Their motive was very clear. They came there to harm Mr. Radoncic. It was very clear. The anger of Sheila Turkovic was so obvious that she was yes because Kelmendi and Radoncic, they fabricated the charges against my husband, and my husband therefore is convicted of 40 years. So this is where she started. And when I confronted her that why did she leave the Express at that time, she was not telling the truth. She was saying that I resigned because I was fed up them telling me what stories I should tell and what should I write and so on and so forth. But she never confirmed that she left Express at that time because she was trying to influence editors not to write about the trial of her husband. She was trying to tell them that her husband is an angel, never committed those monstrous crimes, and this is why she left it. So it was obvious when she swore and she started acting and crying in front of the court and telling that her husband is not an angel, but he never done those crimes that he's charged with, and everything was packed by Radoncic and Kelmendi. It was clear. It was clear from the court that she's not there to tell the truth, but she's there because she believes that the people who framed her husband needs to be in jail, whether there is evidence or not. She did not care. Then all the others who came to follow her testimony were her friends. I mean, of course they were denying that no, we don't know her, but they couldn't keep up so long with this denial. I mean, they were either posting photos on the Facebook, either they were creating groups called, like one of them was like Crna Trojka or Black Trojka. They went even that far. They wrote a book. They wrote a book for this process. So what witness in the world who would come to tell the truth in the courtroom would go to that end and write a book, would go to every night on the Facebook and issue live videos to tell the people of Bosnia what is expected in this one, what is going to happen in the next one, and so on. So it was a challenge to deal with their lies, but of course at the end we succeeded.
So during a trial you used only prosecutors' evidences?
A majority of the evidence that was used from the defense was their evidence, because their evidence was misrepresented. Their evidence was misrepresented to the court. They were putting themselves, they were just translating, they were hiding, not disclosing them in time. They were basically hiding the testimonies that were given before, many years before, right after the death of Mr. Delalic, and that's the evidence that we used. But we also provided other evidence. We also provided other witnesses that I believe the court found them credible, and the evidence that we presented, every single piece of the evidence that the defense presented was considered as credible evidence, and the court admitted without any problem.
Mr. Beriša, how did Judge Adamska reacted to these witnesses and their testimonies?
I believe that while direct examine witnesses from the prosecution side, the court was like waving, you know, maybe they are saying something, maybe there's some motive here, maybe some truth, and so on and so forth. But every time when I took to cross-examine their witnesses, the court had a clear picture. It's been like a year ago that the court had concluded that as far as the count one murder charges, there was no evidence. And there was no evidence because the prosecution, there was no clear and convincing evidence I'm talking about, because the prosecution listed names of people. I mean, got any names that Shayla Turkovic would give to them, and they would list in the indictment as a co-perpetrator. People in Serbia, people who were in some list somewhere as criminals, she would just list there, say, yes, they were also part of the group. Yes, they were participating. They were providing guns. They were providing food. They were providing shelter, and so on and so forth. So the court, I believe, a long time ago, knew that something is wrong with this count especially, knew that something is wrong with these witnesses, knew that there is a motive of these witnesses to testify against at least one person. So I considered Mr. Kelmendi as a victim of the prosecution witnesses who consider that they have a motive revenge against Mr. Radonjic.
Yet they will appeal. I mean, prosecutor will appeal, you will appeal. How will that come?
No court, in my opinion, no court in the world would ever trust testimony of Shayla Turkovic, Amir Cibra, Amir Pashic Facho, Aldin Hajdarevic, and some other prosecution witnesses who showed up there, prepped, coached, instructed to tell lies, reading the indictment in the internet, and then coming and trying to match the story of the... I have no fear whatsoever, or no concern, I would say, whatsoever, that Court of Appeals would ever grant the prosecution's appeal when it comes to the charges that Mr. Kelmendi is acquitted. The only appeal that I believe the court will take in consideration will be the appeal from the defense, because even the count 9 that was left, or a count that Mr. Kelmendi was found guilty, I believe even that will be clear, and in the near future it will be demonstrated, as the court says, that everything was based on hearsay, on Google articles, on the expressions like whole Sarajevo knew, whole Balkan knew. Everyone knew who is that, and everyone knew what Mr. Kelmendi did, but in fact the evidence showed contrary. I'm very happy for the outcome that we got. It was a long process. It was a hard process because we were competing with a biased prosecution, unobjective prosecution, prosecution with motive, not prosecution seeking the truth. So this is the reason it was a complex case, and it was hard for defense, but I think we did it.
How media treated the defense in this case? It was an objective treatment to most part. The only part that there were some portals that, of course, would want to put headlines that looks like a scandal, but there was no meat in between them. The media knew and smelled that the case of the prosecution is sinking. It's been a year that we were going in the courtroom, myself, Mr. Kelmendi, prosecution on the trial panel, and no public, no media, anyone, because they knew, they were smelling that something is wrong with these people. I mean, even a lay person, if would listen to the packs of lies the prosecution witnesses were saying, it would conclude that that's impossible. That is absolutely impossible. Come into Kosovo, sitting in front of professional judges with great experience, very objective, very smart, very sharp people, and telling them that about 10 people were sitting every night in a rotating restaurant in Radan Plaza and talking about liquidating the commander of Sarajevo, it was just a fairy tale. I mean, no one could believe that. So this, I would like to thank all the medias who participated for their work and service that they've done. So they were objectively. What do you think, how will this indictment who was collapsed in Kosovo, how will affect on this process in Sarajevo?
Let's put it this way. Sarajevo is in front of a big test right now. Why I call it test and why I believe it's a test. I call it and I believe it's a test because the Sarajevo is in front of two choices, whether to trust an international tribunal, ULEX in this case, or to trust a couple individuals like Mr. Dubravko Champara and his friends who happen to be witnesses of this case, such as Shayla Turkovic and others. I believe Sarajevo court, I believe Sarajevo prosecution or Bosnian prosecution, Bosnian court will choose the first one. They will trust the verdict, they will trust the judgment of the court of Kosovo, which is composed by majority of international, and they will have to just finish everything concerning the murder charges that they were allegedly investigating for many years, but they never were able to produce any evidence to that.
Well, in your opinion, is there going to be any repercussions for the deeds of prosecutors Mr. Hughes and Champara for what they did in the past?
As far as Mr. Hughes, I believe he finished his career in Kosovo in a very bad way. You can see this from his interview. You can see the fairy tales. He's too coward to say that, look guys, I'm sorry, I trusted the wrong witnesses, I trusted the wrong evidence. I was not the one running the show, but rather following the runners of the show, which was Dubravko Champara, behind the scenes. But he went in the other way. He went and chose to still violate the court orders, still violate the rulings of Human Rights Review panel, who concluded that he violated Article 8 of the Convention concerning Mr. Radončić. And he was trying to convince people that, look, I failed to convince the court, but trust me. So who are you to trust that what you're saying is the truth, but not what the court established? Mr. Hughes finished his career. I believe in a couple of months he should pack and go home and never work as a prosecutor anymore. As far as Mr. Champara, I believe that he also should be rewarded for this failure. But as far as the Balkan prosecution goes, I think they all depend on the political ties that they have. It's not only in Bosnia, I'm sure, but it's also in Kosovo and elsewhere. And maybe there will be no repercussions right now, but it would definitely, as far as the CV, as far as the image, as far as the trust of the public in him, and in that prosecution will be very weak in my belief.
Prosecutor Hughes, in his statements for media, again abused name of Mr. Radončić, Mr. Orić, and some other persons who were just witnesses in this trial.
As I said,
why is he doing that?
What do you expect from someone who lost, and lost very bad? Someone who looked at the end of the trial as a loser, as a liar, as someone who trusted also liars, as someone who trusted the fabricated evidence, as someone who trusted the witnesses' criminal background, a huge criminal background, majority of them. Now what he's trying to do is trying to tell a story that, look, you know, I failed because there were witnesses who were threatened with their own lives. There were the media empire of Mr. Radončić. But I think we all know the truth now. He's saying all these things because he's a loser. He lost this. He lost, he will lose again. And no matter how many times he would stand up, he would lose again because no one would trust his lies, meaning the lies written in the indictment. So why he's mentioned Mr. Radončić? I think that's what he believes that he can sell. That's what he believes that he can get a focus of cameras, focus of people by mentioning Mr. Radončić, because he knows that he was not allowed to mention him. Mr. Radončić, to make it clear, he was not an indicted person in Kosovo. He was not even a witness during the investigation stage. They never knocked at his door and say, look, we have a couple of witnesses here that they are mentioning your name as someone that was involved in preparing the murder of Ramiz Delalic. They didn't. Why? Because they knew what the truth is. They knew that if they approach him at the beginning, they cannot tag Mr. Kelmendi as someone who executed or paid for the murder of Ramiz Delalic. So Mr. Hughes now just conducted more violations after the trial, mentioning the name of Mr. Radonjic, mentioned the name of Mr. Mohamed Ali Gashi, who was once acquitted with a final judgment in Bosnia for this murder. So everyone who hears now Mr. Hughes trying to mention names other than Kelmendi name, they should just view him as someone who's saying those words to justify his failure. He knows that Mr. Radonjic was never and can ever be someone who was involved in the murder of Ramiz Delalic.
Why they didn't call family members of Mr. Delalic to stand in a courtroom? Why didn't they do that?
That was the first.
They were victims.
Yes, they are an injured party. They are listed as per our criminal procedure code as an injured party who has the right to even participate during the investigation, has the right to give her opinion on the potential suspects, an opinion on the motive of potential suspects. Well, they didn't, and that was my very first question that I'd had it to the court before the initial hearing was, where is the victim family? Where is the family of Mr. Delalic? They did not want to bring the family. They did not trust to bring the family because they were too embarrassed to bring the family and call Mr. Delalic as a drug lord. So how could they stand in front of the family, read that indictment, call him as a drug lord when majority of his friends came and said he was against drugs? So that, I believe that is one of the reasons why. And also another reason is that they did not invite them, they did not interview them, they did not summon them to be in the court because they knew that the truth is different. They knew that people that they listed in the indictment are not the people who are involved in the murder of Ramiz Delalic, and they were afraid that the family might stand up and say, look, you're wasting time, you're going after wrong people, we want you to concentrate on the people that we believe that they murdered Ramiz Delalic. Only after a lot of time elapsed, Mrs. Elimana Delalic showed as a witness, and she totally contradicted their theory. She said clearly that he was not absolutely ever dealing with drugs. In contrary, he was a drug fighter. She also stated that they had a great life as parents of the kids, contrary to what Azra Sharic testified, contrary to the statement of Azra Sharic given in the trial in Kosovo, which was for some reason had to be considered as a closed session. I'm not disclosing anything from that, but what is important is Azra Sharic had testified in 2008. Azra Sharic told the authorities at that time what was the relationship between Kelmendi and Delalic. Azra Sharic told the authorities at that time that she was present when Mr. Delalic called Kelmendi during the time that his son had an accident. So the prosecution was blind. The prosecution was purely running for taking down Mr. Radonjic. That is my belief. That is my belief based on the evidence that I saw and the waste of the witnesses, based on the witnesses that I heard. Otherwise, how could they justify? I mean, you have all that evidence that shows. You even have witnesses who say that, well, maybe Mr. Delalic was killed because he was viewed as having an affair with Sheila Turkovic. So they completely denied that. They ignored, like they are not hearing, like they are deaf to that story. And they just think, no, we want to chase the people who sat in rotating restaurant for 6 months and planned even what bullets had to be used. They denied, they ignored the fact that it was a DNA and silencer that was found in the criminal place, and in crime scene. They denied it, they ignored that. We had to open their eyes and say, look guys, we have this. This shows that it's not Strahina Rasheta, the one who could have been the murder from Mr. Delalic. So you got the wrong people. Open up your eyes and look for other suspects. They brought Zijad Turkovic as a witness in Kosovo and invited the court.
What did he say?
What else could he say other than saying that, yes, he was paid by Mr. Radonjic to kill Mr. Kelmendi? Yes, he said, I did want to take his life, but it was not my initiative. That was an order by Mr. Radonjic. And what do you think the court would think in that way? Would they trust him? Would they trust him when there's like at least 4 murders that him and his crew conducted? And proven now. It's obvious that the court found no reasonable doubt to those charges. And we had also a witness called K1, who was his right hand, who described every single crime that he and him conducted in Bosnia. So the prosecution, who relies on testimonies of Zijad Turkovic and his wife Shayla Turkovic and Faco and Cibra and others, it's a problem. It's a problem for the truth. It's a problem for justice. These people, I mean, I heard Cibra had an acronym in Kosovo. We did not disclose it. He went on and on all the time in Facebook, in his book, disclosing that he was a witness in Kosovo. He even violated his protective measure that was attributed to him based on the prosecution request. So they told the Bosnia, look, we are going after Radonjic in Kosovo. We are testifying against him because we want to discover who killed Mr. Delalic and so on. So the fairy tales, the pack of lies that they told, I'm very happy that the court knew what the truth is and knew what the motive of these people is.
So what was the motive for Ms. Saric to testify like that?
I think she was blackmailed. I think she was caught in some wrong moment of her life. Something had happened to her, and something that led the prosecution to tell her, either you come and tell these lies, or something can happen to you. That's my belief. She was very fearful. She was terrified due to the pressures that she got from the prosecution. The prosecution now is trying to sell the story that there were people from Mr. Radonjic sent to terrify her, to blackmail her, to threaten her. That's absolutely untrue. We had no reason whatsoever to have Mr. Saric alter her testimony that she gave in 2008. There was nothing. I mean, it was very clear. I even went on the day when she refused to testify. I told the court, I said, if you want to know the reason why she's refusing, it's simple because of the statement that we just got. Because she knows now she is in tampon zone. She cannot go against the prosecution, but she cannot also stick to what she said in 2008. So what can she do other than just say, okay, I was threatened, I cannot come to testify here, because it was clear. I mean, we had absolutely, as soon as I got the testimony of her given in 2008, I was relaxed. I was not even intending to cross-examine her, and I felt sorry about her, and I still feel sorry about her. Because she was trapped, she was blackmailed, in my belief, from the prosecution, and everything she said for the intimidations from other people, she was forced to say that.
Do you believe that murders of Mr. Delalic will ever be found and brought to justice?
That's the obligation of the prosecution in Bosnia. They have that obligation towards the taxpayers of Bosnia. They have the obligation towards Mr. Delalic's family. They have the obligation towards Mr. Delalic's soldiers. They have the obligation to all the people that believe in justice. They should not rest. They should run after the real killers of Mr. Delalic. But in order to get the real killers of Mr. Delalic, you should stop, or they should stop chasing the innocent people, such as Mr. Kelmendi, Mr. Radonjic, Mr. Nasirodic, Ekrem Lekic, Shahin Pashic, Senat Shahin Pashic, and all these people that they listed as co-perpetrators at that time. They should stop. They should say, look, we were misguided by Shayla Turkovic. She put us in the wrong direction. Whether she has a motive, whether she's she is covering something. My belief is that Sheila Turkovic knows who's involved in the murder of Mr. Delalic, but knows and not telling. She also knew who was involved in cargo robbery in airport in Sarajevo, but she wrote another story. She was like put in there that the people who were connected to the prosecutors, one prosecutor who was prosecuting her husband, that's a person that was involved in cargo. But the court established, in Bosnia, I believe, established that it was her husband who was the organizer and the executor of that robbery. I believe Sheila Turkovic also knows that someone close to her is involved in the murder of Ramiz Delalic, and this is the reason why she did not rest, but trying to point the finger to the wrong people.
If we look this verdict, many of witnesses committed perjury. Would they ever be indicted for that? Or they can also put finger on other person, and so on?
Reporting falsely, it's a criminal offense, I believe, in every country, not only in our country. But these people who reported falsely, they have a source. The source is Sheila Turkovic. Sheila Turkovic created, drafted their stories, met them, explained to them what they need to testify, why they need to testify, why they didn't testify before, because she knew that everyone will be challenged. Why didn't you go to the authorities at that time and say, look, I know who killed Mr. Delalic? She prepped them well. They came, and the answer that they got, they were blackmailed by prosecutor Oleg Chavka. They were blackmailed by prosecutor Diana Kajmakovic. And when you check who those prosecutors are, it's the prosecutors who framed, according to Sheila Turkovic, her husband. I felt bad about, I don't know Mr. Oleg Chavka, I never met him other than saw his work in the Ziad Turkovic's trial, but I invited him. I tried to summon him through the international legal assistance to get him as a witness and to tell our court and to tell our prosecution that he never instructed any of the witnesses as they allege. But for some reason, he was not able to appear as a witness, and maybe he would lose his job because he would be in conflict with his colleague who taught other prosecution witnesses to say, yes, you say that was Oleg Chavka the one who instructed you to keep silent when it comes to Kelmendi, when it comes to Radoncic and others.
When this process started, how did you survive these first couple of months of media circus and everything when Mr. Kelmendi was taken to custody, then he was released, again taken to custody? How did defense respond to all major resources that prosecutors had?
Let's put it this way. It was very, very tough case for the defense. And it wouldn't be tough if the prosecution was objective. It wouldn't be tough if the prosecution was fair. It wouldn't be tough if we were dealing with legal evidence. But it was tough because we were not dealing with prosecution fairness, objectivity. We were dealing with prosecution who would fabricate evidence like this. Let's say today Mr. Kelmendi was released from custody and was put on the more lenient measure. The following morning, Andrew and Champara would cook something, would send it to the court and say, look what I got from Bosnia. They provided us evidence that Mr. Kelmendi is a fugitive from justice. He knew that he's been wanted in Bosnia, and this is the reason why he came to Kosovo.
That came overnight?
Absolutely overnight, in the following morning. That would be, because the time to file an appeal is just 24 hours. So he would walk out, call Champar and say, look, we're in a bad situation. Mr. Kelmendi is going out tonight at home. What can we do? They would sit down, create another version of his escape, and would send. They violated every principle of investigation. They even provided evidence what the defense is using as a colleagues, as a co-defense to represent this case. They were providing evidence that was legally classified evidence. It was like power of attorney. Who is representing Mr. Radonjic, like lawyer Mrs. Vidovic, Vazia Vidovic, which was a great lawyer and did a great job in this process. And same like Leila Čović, another lawyer who did a great job in this process in the beginning and later on. They were going and trying to connect dots, like, look, they are using the same attorneys, they are trying to fabricate this process. So they didn't stop even that. The prosecution in Kosovo went even further. They falsified entries at the border crossings somewhere in Serbia when Mr. Kelmendi had nothing to do. That happened the second time that he was released from custody. It was like showing that, look, he was in Serbia at that time. He was, it appeared to be at that time wanted by Interpol, but he managed to get by the system. When I wrote there that the prosecution, when I responded to that and I said the prosecution is absolutely falsifying evidence, the court responded, this is huge allegations, Mr. Prosecutor. You need to tell us, how did you come to this? And yes, of course, in the following week, the prosecution would say, it was a mistake, the police thought that it's like this, but maybe it was not Mr. Kelmendi, it was another one. So what I'm trying to say, that it was a tough case. It was a tough case for the defense to do it, and we were also working against the huge propaganda of prosecution, not only Kosovo, but elsewhere. I was representing a guy that is listed in Kingpin list based on these false information that the prosecution is providing all the time. It wasn't easy, but I'm happy that we showed to the world of lawyers, we showed to the people in Bosnia, first of all, that these are the wrong people put in the indictment for Mr. Delalic's murder, and I'm very happy that we showed that Mr. Kelmendi is not a drug lord. Mr. Kelmendi was not a chief of an organized crime group who did drug trafficking through Kosovo, Bosnia, Balkan, and elsewhere. And I believe we'll show in the very near future that Mr. Kelmendi is just a businessman who did nothing wrong in his life.
Well, he was listed in the blacklist of the USA. How can you comment that? Did these two prosecutors have something to do with that?
Well, to be fair, the list starts before Mr. Hughes got involved in this case. So I don't want to blame him or his colleagues about this list. But what I said, and I will repeat it here, the list is made from people based on the stories of people like the witnesses that we had here, like the witnesses who were sentenced for many, many years in prison, like the witnesses that they're hanging from a straw. They just anything and everything they would do to get out of the prison. So Mr. Kelmendi is a victim of those kind of people. Mr. Kelmendi is put in that list because of that kind of people, and because of that kind of prosecution. I mean, when you hear those fairy tales and when you hear those stories they were cooked by some of the witnesses concerning drug charges, you see that it's impossible. It's not even a movie. I mean, it goes beyond scenarios of Hollywood movies. It's scenarios of people, and I understand them why, scenarios of people who live by taking at least cocaine, sniffing cocaine, live by trying to make anything and everything to get out of jail, to try to get any bonus. So Mr. Kelmendi was listed there, and I believe that the time will show that Mr. Kelmendi did not belong to that list, and it was wrongfully put in that list.
How many honest witnesses did they got?
Unfortunately, if to be very honest, very few, or almost none from the prosecution side, because they were coached. Even if they were honest witnesses, they were made witnesses. They were made to come and tell lies. They were made like, okay, read the indictment, read what the others said, and you just come and say this. So the court was intervening at least 2 times. So there's minutes for this, saying that Mr. Prosecution, this court does not tolerate witness coaching. It is custom in the United States, maybe, but not in European court, not in Kosovo. Our code does not permit that. You don't talk to the witnesses. You don't go and ask them how they do and what they do and where they've been and what they've... I mean, we had witnesses that went that far that after spending days and hours with the prosecution and investigators, they even went and fabricated notebooks. Fabricated notebooks that the court established that what the entries of the notebooks show, it's absolutely illogical. It does not meet a normal logic of human beings. But as I said, they were running from the angle that, look, this is Nasser Kelmendi. Behind Nasser Kelmendi is Mr. Radoncic and other people. We need to get the court to approve our indictment. Otherwise, what we're going to tell the world, what we're going to tell to intelligence services, what we're going to tell to people, that what kind of trust the people will have in us if we say that, look, sorry, we failed to find credible evidence.
So you mentioned intelligence services. There are new information regarding to that. Mr. Radoncic, when was Minister of Homeland Security in Bosnia and Herzegovina, pronounced 2 Iranian diplomats as persona non grata because they were trying to espionage. So he told them, you two need to get out of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then at the airport they said, tell to Mr. Minister that we will get our revenge.
I can tell you one thing. Mr. Radoncic was targeted in this case. There was no reason in the planet, no logic reason in the planet to have him listed in whatever capacity for the murder from his Delalis. So whether this connects with the previous service that he done as minister, whether this connects to the situation that he happened to be an owner of most viewed media in Bosnia, and I believe Dnevni Avaz and other portals and tabloids that he and his family owned, I don't know. But I can tell you one thing, that if I were a prosecutor and if somebody would show up in front of me with a story like Shayla Turkovic, I would arrest her, I would put her in jail. As I kept saying all the time in court, the prosecution witnesses, they don't belong to this trial. They should have been in jail. They should have been prosecuted, because it's obvious that they have packed lies and they came to harm innocent people. So could be, I mean, these Iranian people or any person involved here could have in one way or another contribute to this, but the biggest fault goes to the prosecution in Bosnia. They should have filtered. They must filter. It's an obligation of the prosecution to filter every single piece of evidence before they submit it to the court. They must have filtered the testimony of Shayla Turkovic. They must have interviewed Mr. Radoncic. They must have compared the testimony of Mr. Shayla Turkovic with the family of Mr. Delalic. They should have concluded the logic scenario before submitting a theory that, look, we found those people, these are the murderers. So what decency they got now, what face is left to them now to go to the people in Bosnia and say, look, sorry, now we have the third group of suspects for the murder of Mr. Delalic. So now I'm afraid that because they are too embarrassed now to go after the right killers, they're just going to cease. They're not going to do anything. Because once they tried with Mohamed Ali Ghashi, they failed. They were like all the witnesses of the prosecution that they showed in front of court in Bosnia concerning, in Kosovo concerning the murder charges. In the trial against Mr. Mohamed Ali Ghashi, they were saying, yes, we know, he killed him. came in Kosovo, said, yes, we know, Radonjic and Kelmendi killed him. What are they going to say when the third person gets arrested, whether that will be maybe, I don't want to speculate, but someone from the crew of Shayla Turkovic, because logic sends you there. The logic sends you that who was arrested the very same night of the murder of Mr. Delalic, who gave an alibi to that person. It was Shayla Turkovic. But when you compare her testimony here, it doesn't match what she testified on the very same night of the murder of Mr. Delalic. So I'm really sorry about the family of Mr. Delalic, and as I expressed my condolences on behalf of my client on very first day, and even in the closing argument, and throughout the entire trial, we felt sorry because they were misguided, they were deceived, and they were deceived purposely by the witnesses, and of course transmitted by the prosecution.
In your opening statements, you provided some informations. Many of those informations from your opening statement came out as a truth.
I believe everything what we submitted in the very first day in front of the trial panel, it resulted to be truth, and it was no single piece of information or piece of evidence that we submitted and the court did not find it credible. I'm very pleased with the way we conducted everything. I'm sorry for the skin of Mr. Kelmendi that he had to live 4 years and 2 months in detention due to those lies of the prosecution. Prosecution in Kosovo initially arrested Mr. Kelmendi only for the murder charges, so the charges were very clear. There was no charges against him for drug trafficking. It was only later on packed because the prosecution in Bosnia knew that the charges against Mr. Kelmendi for murder of Mr. Delalic at some point will fell. And what they've done, they just found another 2 heartless witnesses that I called in order to get the head of Mr. Kelmendi. So everything what we submitted ended up to be that way. I have submitted at that time that this is fabricated indictment, that the people who came here to testify have a personal motive, that Shayla Turkovic is the wife of the person who wanted to take the life of Mr. Kelmendi and his family. So what do you expect? I mean, someone who wanted to kill him with a bullet and explosive devices and couldn't reach it found another way to kill him. How? By fabricating the murder that he could have done participated himself in that one. I never forget the moment when I was cross-examining a witness for the drug charges, a witness called K1 that who also testified against Ziad Turkovic. He said that Ziad Turkovic had brought assassins from Serbia to kill Mr. Delalic. He even, with his own initiative, showed the address where the assassins resided. He showed the place where he said that this is the flat that he and I was there. My brother-in-law was sending them food and so on and so forth. But the prosecution was blind and deaf. They did not want to hear that. I mean, it was like, no. We are not here to talk about this. So what I'm trying to communicate to everyone who would listen to us is that the prosecution lied to them. They should not trust the prosecution. They should not have any reservation whatsoever what the court concluded for those charges that was acquitted Mr. Kelmendi. They should make pressure to the prosecution in Bosnia to go after the right persons. When I say the right persons, mean the real killers of Mr. Delalic, because most probably they are still alive and most probably some of them might be at liberty too.
Mr. Beriša, do you have something to add at the end of our conversation?
I would just want to again express my condolences to the family of Mr. Delalic, condolences also on behalf of my client. And I also want to encourage them to seek the truth. I encourage them to push the prosecution in Bosnia to get the right killers. by assuring them that what they wrote, what they were going after up to now, it was wrong. And it is wrong. It will be wrong. They should not wait any appeal. They should not wait anything, but they should be at their door pushing and seeking for justice. They deserve justice. Mr. Delali deserves justice, but not justice from Dubravko Champara, because he's not going to get it. He's not going to do it. It's not going to serve to them, that justice, and not justice, of course, from Andrew Hughes, who's a foreigner who will go home, forget about this case, and consider like, I tried my best, that was my paycheck, still paid to me, didn't lose anything. So thank you for having me in this opportunity to explain what happened. I would be very happy to have a chance to confront with any of the prosecution, either witnesses or the prosecutor, Dubravko Champara himself. I invited even Andrew Hughes here, that if you think that you're right, what you're communicating, we go in public. We go and show to the public who did what. And I would say the same. Anyone who's willing to confront defense arguments, anyone who's willing to confront with the truth that we possess versus the lies that they have fabricated, I'm open at any time. So thank you very much.
Mr. Beriša, thank you, Mr. Beriša. Bio je to Besnik Beriša, poznati prištinski advokat.